at 7:01 p.m. Dave, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Dan?
Here.
Claire?
Here.
Len?
Here.
Jill?
Here.
Greg?
Here.
Michelle?
Here.
And I'm here. All council members are present.
Great, thank you. The first item on the agenda will be the Board of Supervisors report. I'll turn it over to Lena Silberman for that.
Thank you. So I'm going to try and go through this really quickly. One of the things that I was asked to report on is the El Granada Medians project. Don't have anything too new to report, but I spoke with DPW and they're planning to start work in August or September. That date just depends on the bird nesting in that area. For the Medio Creek Bridge, Murata Bridge, that project is being delayed. I have a letter, a project update that I can share, and I will share in the chat that gives the specific details. But in summary, the reason it's being delayed is with the coastal development permit were some conditions that were needed for approval, some additions to that project, which necessitate redesigns. Those redesigns need to go back to state agencies. This, as well as strains of material and labor costs, are the cause of the delay. What our new timeline is beginning construction in summer of 2022. For the multimodal trail, the step we are on, oh, can everyone hear me? Sorry. Good. The county has signed the maintenance agreement with Caltrans, and we're awaiting their signature. It has been delayed for a period of time, so Supervisor Horsley is preparing to bring this issue to District 4 Caltrans Director Dina El Tawanzi's attention if that becomes necessary. For the El Granada Quarry Park scoping project, or the El Granada Quarry Park Fire Resiliency Scoping Project, we had our first meeting yesterday. It had representation from the RCD, from the Supervisor's Office, from the Midcoast Community Council, from San Mateo County Parks, and CAL FIRE. Basically, in summary, that item will be going to the board on August 3rd for approval, and we're hoping to be able to put out the request for proposal, or RFP, immediately following that date, so that 6 to 8 weeks from then we'll be able to have a contractor selected for that project. The goal completion date for that project is late spring of 2022. For the county coordinator project, the only update I have is that the county is officially working with the group DUDEC to create our application. We have a huge group of people. I won't go into the details of all the people who are involved with the creation of this application, but we're meeting weekly and I can keep you apprised on the details of how that grant is going to, how our application is going to look and our plans for implementation for it. I don't want to go into details again about what the local hazard mitigation plan is, but we do have a workshop, public workshop coming up on August 12th from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. You can pre-register for that, and I have a link that I can share where you can register for that event. And finally, on the topic of COVID, so I'm sure as you all have heard, as of July 26th, face coverings are required for all employees and visitors of County of San Mateo facilities, regardless of vaccination status. That is following the July 16th recommendation, not requirement, but recommendation by a coalition of Bay Area health officials to wear face covering indoors. That is due to the Delta variant, which is now responsible for more than 80% of new infections nationwide. So our county is urging businesses not requiring to adopt universal masking requirements for customers. For vaccinations, approximately 11% of San Mateo County residents aged 12 and up remain unvaccinated. And I actually made an error that Chair Will very thankfully pointed out. So that is compared to, I compared that to 36% statewide unvaccinated and 42% nationwide, but those data points are 18 and up. So it's actually, those aren't great comparison to make. So I apologize for that. And I will include all the links to resources to get vaccinated in the chat. And that is all the updates I have for today.
Okay, thank you, Lena. Any questions for Lena? If so, please raise your hand. And as a reminder, the way to raise your hand is to, first place you want to look is under the reactions tab. At the bottom of your screen, there's an option to raise hand. If you don't see it there, it may be under the participants tab if you're on a desktop computer. If you are on a mobile app, it would be under the More tab. And if you're dialing in from a mobile phone, it would be *9. So I see that we have a couple questions. I'll start with Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Lena, for your report. Yeah, we all want to get through this COVID thing. I just want to confirm that you don't have anything back from Steve Monowitz as far as the El Granada Fire Station lighting. And I did want to add that, I could be wrong, but to date, I have not heard planning or anyone within the fire district acknowledge the American Medical Association's concerns with LED lights. And I just wanted to add that in the process of deciding which color of lighting to have, what type of LED lights to have in the community in 2015, I personally witnessed a lot of community members bringing up the medical issues with LED lights. So I'm hoping that at least, that could be acknowledged by the county.
Thank you, Dan. I will let the supervisor know of your comment.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. Next, Len. Len, you're on mute.
Yes, for the multimodal trail, is there any indication that the delay with Caltrans is more than just a procedural or slow organization level? Is there a concern they have?
Yes. Basically, it's contingent on another project, which doesn't really make sense to me, if I'm honest. So that's why we're going to bring it to the director, because it has nothing to do with the maintenance agreement. That has been going on for over 6 months. They've seen it multiple times. They approved it. It's an issue with, for all intents and purposes, holding another project hostage.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next, Jill. Jill, you're on mute.
Thank you. Hi, Lena. I have 2 questions. Did you ever hear back from Olivia Boo regarding the American Tower permit for Montera Mountain?
I have not. I did email her this morning because I think she got back from her vacation yesterday. So I sent her an email today. I haven't heard back yet.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, so Governor Newsom came out with, I don't know if it's a mandate or what, but he's requiring state employees to show COVID-19 vaccination proof or get weekly testing. Does the county follow that as well?
No. The only thing that I've seen internally from the county is pre this mask mandate that is now instituted for county facilities. We would have to report that we have vaccinated to not wear masks, but that's moot at this point because we all have to wear masks. So that's all we have at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Any other questions for Lena? Okay. I got a message from Harvey that he is again not able to make it tonight due to a meeting conflict. So we won't have a report from the city of Half Moon Bay. Do we have any other government officials who'd like to speak tonight? Okay, I don't see anyone, so I'll move on to public comment and announcements. This is the time for anyone to speak on anything that's not on tonight's agenda. The main items, again, on tonight's agenda are a report about eucalyptus removal in El Granada from a member of the community, and then the topic on drought. So if anyone has any comments on other items, please raise your hand now. I do see Ann Martin. So I'll go to you, Ann. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. I don't think I'm going to take that long. I had some communications with Lan and Dave prior to the meeting, and a couple of us have comments on the request that certain aspects of the July 14th meeting minutes be amended. And so I am wondering if this is the appropriate time to request that the approval for the July 14th minutes be moved from the consent to the regular agenda.
Thanks, Anne. That will be the next item, and I believe Len is already planning to make that request. So you've been heard.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I see we have C. Blanton with his hand raised as well. Is that the same request, or do you have a different subject to speak on?
No, it's a different request.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah,
so my name is
go ahead,
Carrie
you have 3
Blanton.
minutes.
Okay, my name is Carrie Blanton, and I have a question about safety procedures when tree companies are cutting down trees. I do live at 655 Miramar Drive, and there's a large amount of tree cutting taking place on the vacant property next to my house. There are several other houses within close proximity of the tree cutting along Miramar Drive. This week, we did have an incident where a log from a tall eucalyptus tree that was being cut fell uncontrolled onto Miramar Drive next to a residential driveway and started rolling down the hill. There were no road guards or signs posted to indicate that a risk existed to anyone at that time had they stepped out of their house or driven along that portion of Miramar Drive. Had a pedestrian been struck, they would have likely been killed, and if a car had been hit, it would definitely have been destroyed. We are asking for guidance for the appropriate mechanism for reporting unsafe acts by contractors, and also how do we protect ourselves against any unsafe behavior in the future during tree cutting or similar types of work. We do understand that there is an intent to develop this vacant property, and we are just asking for guidance on ensuring our safety during this possible development. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you for that. We don't typically respond directly to items in public comment. I don't know that we have an answer for that, or if Lena or
The
Dave.
brief answer, unless Lena has a better answer, the brief answer is it would be the county building inspector and or the code compliance group.
That is exactly what I was going to say. I don't know if Carrie had called our office or if it was someone else, but we had that question this week and we followed up, and what Dave said is absolutely correct.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Greg, I believe you had an announcement.
Yeah, I just want to mention something that Montero Water and Sanitary District has mentioned before, but tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m., they're holding something called the Elected Community Service Academy. It's a multi-session thing that helps inform people about what's involved in public office, how to run for it, and so forth. I would just encourage everybody in the community to take advantage of this. I think it'll be very helpful, and I would just note that because of the age of the current council, we might need some help in the coming years, not naming names.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Next, I'll go to Claire.
2 announcements. One, to follow up on what we had talked about a couple of meetings ago about vaccination rates on the Midcoast. And I've talked with the people that do the data collection and number crunching for the county. And probably there is not a glaring problem with our vaccination rates. It's probably due to the fact that the county doesn't know how to handle our post office box addresses, and that we have a relatively small population, which is prone to over and under counts. So we're probably not in as bad shape as we thought we might be. Secondly, want to thank Kimberly Williams, who made a book available to the council, which I would recommend highly if anybody wants to pick one up. It's called Adapting to Rising Sea Levels, Legal Challenges and Opportunities. Very, very readable, very important. I'm passing it on to Jill forthwith, who's passing it on to Greg, but after we've had a chance to look at it, I think it should be kept carefully and securely at our office so that we can refer to it as needed. It's $50 in paperback, so, and it's currently not in stock. So we can't, I'll run out and get one, but I would put it on your list for future purchases. So thank you to Kimberly.
Great. Yes, thank you, Kimberly. I might be up for reading that after Greg, so we can continue to pass it along the council. Okay, any other announcements or public comments? I don't see any, so we'll move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Len?
I have a request to remove move the minutes to the regular agenda so comment can be made.
Okay. We can remove that item. So the only item on the consent agenda is the fiscal year 2021 treasurer's report. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
A second?
Second,
Okay, Dave second, or Dan seconds. Dave, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Before I do that, who seconded?
Dan.
Dan. Okay, thank you. Dan,
yes,
Claire,
I'm going to abstain because I didn't see it posted to the website.
okay. Len,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
and I will also say yes. It was posted just after Len mailed it out to the council members, Claire. So
Okay.
it passes 6-0, one abstention.
It's posted probably to the section, the finance section, but not to this meeting.
Oh, well, that's where I was looking, was at this meeting. Okay.
Agreed. And it should be posted there so we can fix that. But yeah, good point. Okay. So as Dave mentioned, the consent agenda passes with just the treasurer's report. Next item is the regular agenda. And the first item up on the regular agenda tonight is a presentation on the neighborhood eucalyptus removal in El Granada. And I'll hand it over to Claire to introduce that agenda item. Oh, Claire, you're still on mute.
Yeah. I am really happy that we have a community member tonight making a presentation. It's great to involve people in what we're doing. It's not just all us. And they've got a really exciting project, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Danny about the neighborhood project to remove, I think it was 31 eucalyptus trees on El Granada Avenue. So I'll turn it over to Danny.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. It's a fairly straightforward topic, so I'm going to blow through the slides quickly and just open it up for Q&A. I'll share my screen. Let me know if I've got any issues presenting or if I'm not hearing a question. I won't be looking at the comments being posted if people are raising their hands, but by all means, just interrupt audibly. The slides will get us back on track. And are we now seeing the slides here?
Yeah, we can see your screen if you can put it into
And
presentation
yep,
mode.
Yep. And
Perfect. We can see it.
I'm going to hide the thumbnail view there. All right. So yeah, this is the plan number from the county planning as 2020-00369. I'm going to talk about why we did it, where the work was done, a little bit about the permitting process, show you some pics of before and after, talk a little bit about how we got bids and financed it, and acknowledge the people involved. Fire safety is what we've been talking about for many years. It's the primary driver here. The tree pictured is a fall and crush hazard, or at least was, right outside our back deck. It was significantly moribund and then regrew, but it was mossy all over, and yeah, just dead branches falling off. Economy of property management. Everybody knows if you've been faced with the eucalyptus mitigation, it's something you can do in a scorched earth fashion, or something that you can continue to do because you're piecemealing it and doing it in a halfway fashion and seeing eucalyptus basically continue to seed. There's a real serious environmental reclamation motivator in that it's an invasive species, and the natural chaparral just doesn't feature something like this. And it really does displace lots of native species that we'd like to have. It does not provide good habitat. And the last on the list is aesthetics. This is a mixed bag. Some people would rather be among the tall trees, and that's a fair motivator, but it's basically fifth place to all the rest. That's our El Granada Boulevard. That's my house. My wife and I have lived here for 16 years. We have thinned out the eucalyptus since we moved in. In recent years, and ever since last summer, we've really looked to try and get something like you've got on the other side of El Granada Boulevard. The next slide then shows the 4 properties on the permit, and that's where we aim to remove all the eucalyptus. Fortunately, and that makes this project really, really easy. Actually, someone chime in audibly. Is everybody hearing me? I'm not even paying attention.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good deal. Avenue Portola is a paper street. It's in the maps, but it's not maintained as a county road. It's surrounded by these paper lots that are on the backside of the residences of El Granada Boulevard. Fortunately for our project, we got permission from the landowner here to use an existing fire road path through this property to access the back of each property involved. This saved us the hassle of going street side, and it just overall made the project feasible financially. The 4 plots then again are 491, 499, 507, and 515 El Granada Boulevard. We also pulled in 523 for a little bit of work that they needed done that wasn't required to be permitted. So here's the timeline, roughly. By that, I mean to say I didn't exactly scale these little marks properly, but the dates are all correct. Back in October, we had the first talks with San Mateo County Planning, and sent in a permit. And then in November, put in a revision when we heard about the regulatory requirements for approving simply the permit for our property, 507 El Granada Boulevard. I decided to go ahead and expand the application and invited my neighbors to ride along, because if we were going to get a coastal development permit application involved, I might as well make the job as big as we could make it. And they're all happy to ride along on that process. Somewhere in February, we got all the requirements in. I don't have the date here for the final application there. And then we had the meeting set for April 14th. That was really an interesting date, because at 9 o'clock in the morning, we had our application hearing. It lasted about an hour and a half, and it was pretty calm. And then that evening, you all had the Midcoast Community Council meeting for wildfire preparedness and the Quarry Park mitigation. And that lasted from 7 p.m. until maybe 11 o'clock, when the general public signed off and you had to conclude your business. 2 weeks later, our permit comment period closed and we were free to go about getting bids. I did that for several weeks. And then in very short succession, we had the pre-work biologist site visit on the 9th of June, and then the collective decision by the homeowners to fund it on the 12th of June, and then the cut-in start on the 15th of June. The project has been ongoing since then. It's been about, what, 6 weeks? And we had 2 really good weeks of work up front in dry weather. And then we had a couple of weeks of really damp, typical coastal weather. It's just not as easy to work logs. And I was deferential to their jobs and just said, go ahead and work the job when it's easiest. So we had a couple of weeks of really good activity, a couple of weeks of downtime, and then the last couple of weeks it has picked up quite a lot again. And it's very nearly done. I think the lead is saying there's about 5 dry work days remaining for the rest of the log cleanup and stump removal. The link is provided here for the meeting on the 14th of April for the 9 a.m. Planning Commission hearing. And I think that's all recorded if anybody's interested in seeing how that went. The project delays I mentioned were the wet weather. The bird nest spotted by a biologist that took maybe half of the, maybe a third to a half of the work site out of commission for a couple of weeks while we worked adjacent to it and kept out of a 50-foot diameter. And then when the biologist came back and saw that that nest had fledged, we were free to pursue the rest of the work underneath that tree and around that tree. So there was the bird nest delay, a couple of weeks of wet weather, and then one eucalyptus still standing as a 40-foot pole because it has a rather large beehive just off of ground level. So they're going to clean up the rest of the logs and then drop that one when they can run away without anything blocking their path. Here are the before and after pictures. This one is from my backyard. Looking towards, this would be the general direction of the harbor. And you can see a major log taken out here and a few of the other logs taken out in the near field with the farther down the valley, still populated. This is a really dramatic one from across the valley. That's pretty much captures the entirety of the work site. And I would say dang near every tree that was removed in the project behind those 4 homes. Maybe a couple off to the far right are not pictured here. And that picture, the current after pictures were taken just this afternoon. All of those stumps will be cut to ground level. And I plan on tarping them ultimately just to make sure we don't have any regrowth. This is then from farther down the valley looking up. The picture was also taken today. The trees in the near field will be remaining. Those are off of our property and down the valley a little bit further. And that basically shows how many logs are left to clean up. And that's the 4 or 5 days worth of log removal. It's been an interesting process to watch. They've chipped everything up to 16 inches diameter or so, and are in the process of using a small bobcat with pincher gripper, and then this crane to load into trucks. I've heard from the arborist that they're taking the small trucks locally to the flatland to transfer the logs onto large trucks, full semi flatbeds, and they're actually driving the green waste to a discounted dump site in Hayward because the local fees would be a little bit higher. This is something I just want to feature because I'm really pleased with this. At the bottom of the steps in our backyard, you can see the 2 little bushes next to the big stumps. Those are actually my little redwoods that have been completely saved by a really careful tree cutting technique. The arborist would just climb up the side. When they're limbing, they would literally throw the limbs to the left and the right to avoid the little redwoods. And I had a few crushed. I knew they would be down valley, but I think I have maybe 8 or 10 of these right next to large stumps still standing right next to our houses. Really, really good to see. The bidding process was pretty much just going out and asking every arborist team we could find and being patient. And ultimately, we ended up with a current cost of about a $1,500 tree, anything up to 16 inches that they can shred. If they are bidding on these in bulk, and if they have easy access, and if they're allowed to mulch them all. Any of the really, really big trees, they cost more money for large log removal. And it's something that we didn't have to access, is basically the prohibitiveness of site access. And if you've got an easy path to your job, it's just going to be much easier for them.
Nursing home residents, a third shot may end up being.
So as far as financing, after we got the lowest possible bid, I just hosted a Zoom meeting and I asked everybody to just throw in a blind bid to my phone as a text, and I would come back and see after a first pass if we were anywhere close to having enough money. And I encouraged everybody to just keep it to what they could afford and what they would really value if all these trees were taken out. I kind of treated it as a game. And I personally consider it a 5-way game of chicken. If we keep on the same path, the fire risk will eventually have really negative consequences. We just have to veer off the path enough, the path being inaction, by removing enough trees, and basically we'll avoid that head-on collision. That's the hope anyway. Neighbors have taken advantage of the permit exemption July 1st of this year to next year, and the presence of the arborist team in the valley to do work adjacent to our work site now that the trees within 100 feet of their structures are fair game. And I'm really all for it. The process has worked out really well overall. My only suggestion to San Mateo County after seeing the cost of this was to maybe consider funding a per home or per property credit for the green waste disposal. That would offset the cost of the tree removal. And it's something that so many residents face, landowners and residents. I don't know what the consideration would be for funding between homeowners and or paper plot owners, but I would encourage the county to basically find a way to fund that. That's my lesson learned coming out of this. The people involved, the top 5 rows are 5 adjacent households involved in the project. Fred, Isaac, and Annette Merriman were here when we moved in 16 years ago. And Fred has been a leader in eucalyptus reduction. He did that before it was cool. David Oliphant was really helpful. They live right next door to us. He's a realtor. I think he does Blue Sky Realty, and he looked up a lot of the property owners and actually knew the property owner in the backyard personally. That gave us permission to use their site and cross it. Colby Williamson and Christy Jordan right next door just moved in last summer and coincidentally replaced the last homeowner that really liked to have the trees up close, enabling the whole project to go forward pretty much. Richard Brady and Nancy Brady also really helpful down at the end of the project site. Camille was essential. She was the San Mateo County project planner who put it all together and organized the planning meeting for us. And Cleopatra Tude, the San Mateo County RCD biologist, with the pre-site visits and the in-progress visits, was essential to basically making sure that we were paying deference to all the sensitive species. We also had help from Erica Harris and Sheena Sidhu at the RCD. Austin Seeley came out and visited the site, and CAL FIRE threw their support behind the project. And Denise at Fire Safe San Mateo tried to help get us some grant money, but it didn't pan out. But she's all over that and really helpful. The doers of the work were led by Carlos Diaz San Miguel. He was the arborist that provided the quote, and he oversaw the project. And I didn't actually speak to the team much on the ground, but just through conversations with him, that's how the redwoods got saved, and that's how we're getting completion, and really good communication with the team, really good progress. Walter Wilson was their team leader on the ground, and yeah, he keeps it safe for everybody. I've seen them do their meeting the first thing in the morning. They just talk about safety first, and that's good to see. So those are all the people involved. I'd have to throw out a honorable mention, I suppose, to Noya Valencia of United Tree Services. He had the runner-up bid, I think. It would have been, yeah, this is the cost in new sky amounts. Basically, we had maybe at a 1.2, a 1.4, and a 1.6 of the amount, and then some real outliers, 3 times the amount and 4+ times the amount. So it wouldn't have happened with the high bids, but eventually we just got it together with the right arborist, got the homeowners together, and made the decision. And we're really, really happy with the result. I think everybody feels we've got a really good value overall. And yeah, we're happy to be allowed to do it. I would expect next summer that the county can extend or hopefully make permanent the exemption for the removal of trees within 100 feet. And that's all I have to say. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much, Danny. That was a great presentation.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was super informative. I actually wanted to start out with a quick question, which is just in terms of the cost. I know you quoted that it was about $1,500 per tree for up to 16 inches and much more expensive beyond that. I was wondering if you have like an average amount per tree that it ended up costing.
I can say that I think there's no more than a $3,000, $3,500 tree involved in our project. They were up to maybe 3 feet across. We had 2 big trees like that between homes street side that they had to take apart in pieces. And those, in speaking with the arborist, yeah, maybe contributed between $3,000 and $4,000 each. It is always good to have a project that allows for economy of scale. And there's no doubt that our average is pulled down significantly by having 31 trees in the permit by definition for being larger than 12 inches in diameter, plus another, I would say 8 or 9 trees right at around 11 or 12 inches that didn't meet the permit requirement. So in removing nearly 40 trees on a site where they have good access, we've probably got an average of $1,500 for the shreddable trees up to 16 inches, and maybe an average of around $3,000 for the larger trees.
Thank you so much. Definitely makes me question the cost that we're seeing to remove the trees in the El Granada medians of around $10,000 per tree.
I've heard some of those, and all I can say is our trees are perhaps 3 to at most 4 foot in diameter and are very large poles. If a tree is 6 or 8 or 10 feet in diameter and it has been given more light and room to bush out and branch out like a median tree, it would make sense to me that there's more cutting and debris removal and overall size of log removal. But I heard those numbers and I immediately thought perhaps there just needs to be more qualified vendors involved in the bidding process. That's my first thought.
Yeah, absolutely. From my understanding, it's a balance of speed versus going out to competitive bidding and having lower costs. Okay, I'll go on to other people who have questions in the order in which they raise their hands. And so I'll start with Greg.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say something Danny's heard me say to his face. I don't know if we have an award for community leadership, and heroism But wouldn't this gentleman make an excellent member of the Midcoast Community Council in the coming years? That's just want to put that out there.
I only have to say I just live here, but I suppose that's exactly what you want to hear from somebody that you're trying to set up for such a position.
Okay, is that it, Greg? For now. Okay, let's move on to Jill.
Thank you for your presentation. It was enlightening in some ways, and I commend you for your hard work. I know that takes a lot of time and effort to coordinate, and sounds like you've been very busy with it. And I'm glad your little redwoods are saved. That's nice. I have two questions really. The first is, did removal of your eucalyptus trees have any impact on your fire insurance? Did it reduce it, or did you notice?
We have not requested a change in the fire insurance cost. That is something we should go about doing. Yeah. And I'll get back to you if that actually works out.
Okay. And the second question, well, did the project cost about $100,000 total?
No, it was significantly less than that,
Okay.
actually. Yeah. And thank you for your help with the biologist's questions about bats and eucalyptus. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'll go to Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. Really appreciate you sharing this with the MCC and the community. I'm assuming that it sounds like from your presentation that all of the cutting was done by hand, chainsaws, but I'm curious, did any of the vendors or the contractors talk about options of feller bunchers? They're machines that are right on tracks and then drive up to the tree, grab it, and then cut it down real low to at the ground level, and then lay it down. My assumption is that for this small project, they probably wasn't looked at too much, but I really like, you know, your thinking and talking about economy of scale, because you know, there's a lot more eucalyptus standing that probably should be laying down and chipped up. But I was just wondering if you know, if that was these machines that I think they're better with smaller diameter. Maybe I'm not sure the limitation, but were they brought up with any of the contractors?
No, it wasn't. It was not something that was discussed much. I have not seen them in action in San Mateo County myself. I haven't really looked for them. I have looked up the videos and liked what I see after attending the April 14th MCC meeting. And you mentioned it then, and it's great machinery. I suspect, as you suspect, that basically that's a piece of machinery that comes in for hundreds of trees or thousands, not dozens. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Danny.
Okay, next I'll go to Len.
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation and your work there. As we noted, or Greg pointed out, it really provides a leadership model, if you will. Have you or your group been approached by other neighbors who have shown interest and wanted to learn from you directly, those along El Granada Boulevard?
There are a large number of neighbors that have requested the arborist's info and have gotten quotes, and there are several neighbors that have started cutting trees within 100 feet of their homes. What has not happened that I have seen, at least, is a large number or even any number of consecutive homeowners pitching in and making a go of it like this. And to be fair, that as of last fall was simply a byproduct of my I don't know, impatience, petulance with the permitting process being larger than I thought it should be for simply our own backyard. So I thought in an economy of scale fashion, if you're going to make the application process this onerous, let's let it apply to everybody around me. So, yeah. And now
So-
that we don't, now that that permitting process is really not there, it really is up to everybody to look and see what do I want to do? And talking with neighbors can certainly offset your cost for getting a larger job done at once. But to be fair, we are just in the absolute perfect geography with the access of the paper road Portola at the bottom of our valley and the absence of obstructing plots between our trees and that access road to remove them. So I know a lot of the rest of El Granado Boulevard has trees on their properties they would like to remove and would like to drop them downhill, but they're blocked effectively by the paper plot owner between their plot and, for instance, the Portola access road.
And have any of the vacant lots, which I assume are the paper lots in part you're referring to, reached out to you? Or do they have any sense of ownership of the problem that you can detect?
It's a variety. I have spoken with a few of them. Some acknowledge that they'd like the eucalyptus to be gone and don't have the money to do it. In at least one instance I know of, the homeowner adjacent to the empty lot is simply going to pay with the landowner's acknowledgement and permission to have the 3 last eucalyptus removed because they're simply over their house and they don't want them there. So it's all over the place community wise. I don't have any conversations with anyone that owns a property and blows off the responsibility, but I haven't had that many conversations with paper plot owners myself.
Well, thank you. I look forward to getting in touch with you offline to explore that further.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Len. Next, I'll go to Graham.
Danny, thanks very much for the presentation, and thanks for leading this whole process. Any thoughts on how much reduction there would be in the whole timeline now that the permitting requirements have changed?
I ran the permit process from October through April, and then immediately started taking bids. So if we were to start today with taking bids for the project, it would take May, June. Yeah, it would just take a month and a half from now to get the right price and then to start. And if your team was as fast as New Sky, in 3 or 4 months from now, you could have a major project done. At this point, if you have just a couple of trees, and I've seen a couple of neighbors do this, they reach out and they say, hey, you're close, can you do this too? And it's happening in just a matter of days.
Right. Yeah, and because you had what, almost 6 months of permitting process, I guess.
Yep. It was
Yeah.
about 6 months. Yep. And to be fair, I want to see the buffer zone extended. I want to see the same exemption or allowance made beyond 100 feet from structures. But I understand this is what the county can easily do due to this CEQA guidelines and the exemption allowed by some other authority. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. And Claire is next.
Danny, I suspect that your project had something to do with the change in the permitting process. And it wasn't the whole thing, but it certainly highlighted it. And I just love it when people don't just sit around and wait for the county to do something, because that can be a long wait. So this is a model that I hope other people will think about what they can do as well about other things. But I have a question. One of the things that we wonder about sometimes is the state of the soil and the ecosystem once the trees are gone. It looks like you left the roots in the ground, which I guess does help hold the soil. And you've got your little redwoods, which is great. Are you doing anything else in terms of soil stabilization or replanting?
There is no soil stabilization per se. There isn't a significant amount being torn up because we're doing it in the dry season, and it would absolutely be a non-starter to try and do this whenever it's raining. Um, As far as replanting, I am intending on running some drip irrigation to fruit trees and stuff that blossoms a lot for honeybees and whatever other local native trees aren't 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 so crazy. I know that I could be a bad neighbor if I let my redwoods grow too close to the house, too large to the house. So I'm planning on managing those and keeping those to 6-inch diameter at most, close to the house, and maybe putting a few of those more down the valley where it has been really cleared. And it would take them 30 years to actually, yeah, to get in anyone's view. That's the plan for now, really. But it's all tentative, and it's 4 or 5 properties worth. So yeah, I think in it wasn't Austin Sealy, was it Rich Sampson who said that in projects like this, they see an effective clear cut go back to chaparral within just a few years. So whatever we don't intentionally plant with fruit trees or whatever else will start looking like the chaparral that we see on the other side of El Granada Boulevard, where there is an effective fuel break in some portions, at least, between the quarry park and the homes.
Okay, and then back to Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. I was curious to hear from you as to how the wood chips or the shredding was used. I'm imagining that it was just dispersed throughout the area.
Yep.
Adding biomass and actually the erosion was brought up. Adding to erosion control, the rainwater will filter through and the wood the mulch would help hold the water in the ground and just be a good thing overall. Was there any comments from the contractor or any of the contractors and that kind of support that, or how do you feel how all that worked?
It's perfect. The conversations with all the different arborists were really informative, and they are and yeah, it was a licensed Carlos Diaz San Miguel. He is a licensed arborist, and he pointed out that it is perfectly good for the shredding to be blown around, and it's basically what the permit was based upon. At the county's conditions of approval were all okay with blowing mulch and leaving the stumps in the ground, but just cutting them to the ground level and mitigating regrowth, because basically a project this big for eucalyptus removal should effectively stop eucalyptus regrowth. I actually exempted the few pine trees we have from the process. We got a little bit of encouragement to throw them in if we wanted to, but I just wanted to keep it. It's, for me personally, it's about the eucalyptus. They don't really belong, and yeah, that's what I was going for.
Okay, thank you, Danny.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And now Donalyn Polito.
Hi, I'm one of Danny's neighbors. Actually, I've been watching this go on and started the permit process with some trees in my yard to get them cut down. But then you guys enabled us to not worry about that. But there is just a cost, and depending on where you live on the hill, how to get rid of the trees makes that cost go up significantly. It'll double the cost easily if it's not clear, or they can't drop the tree or things of that sort. So I just wanted to make it clear, when we say that you want other people to take action, I have been trying to get somebody out here for a good 2 years or more to look at all the trees around me that aren't on my property. I have no way of controlling that. And even if I took the trees down in my yard, which were a whole 3 trees, that wouldn't do much for me because I have neighbors' trees that are right up against my lot line and over my roof line and in the back all over the place. And nobody, it's impossible to get. I called the fire department, I've talked to the supervisor, talked to a lot of people, and they've been on these meetings a couple of times. It's a little bit frustrating. So it's not that we don't want to take action or don't, it's that what are we going to do? I can't get these people to cut the trees down, and nobody of authority comes to tell them to cut the trees down either. So I just wanted to kind of enlighten you a little bit on some of the frustrations that some of us have with this tree stuff. You know, it's not just wanting to take action and then, you know, getting an arborist to take the tree down. That's very easy, quite frankly. The getting to deal with people that you don't know, or that they're paper lots or whatever, you don't have any control over that. So I just wanted to make that clear, that it's pretty frustrating, and there's still trees all around my house that I would love to see not here anymore, or removed at least to that 100-yard. I mean, gee, if we had 100-yard, that would be great. Or I had 5 yards, that would be great. You know, but I don't know what else to do. So I just kind of wanted to let you know that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Donalyn. I think it's great to hear that where it's something we're aware of, and that we'll be continuing to see how we can potentially address that. Next, I'll go to Susan Casey.
Hi, I'm neighbors with Danny down the street, and hi, Donalyn. Donalyn just, I'm just up the street from her. And I'd like to speak a little bit to what I've been trying to do with the help of Coastside Fire Protection District. There's 8 lots, and some of the lots are behind Donna Lynn's house, and some of them are behind my house. There's 8 of them from this paper road of Avenue Portola, and so what I've been trying to do is work with the Coastside Fire Protection District to enact one of the ordinances that they have and they came out to inspect the lots. They started out with the process of notifying the property owners to remove the ground fuel and ladder fuel, that it wasn't any eucalyptus unless they were dead or on the ground, or saplings. But a lot of ground fuel was removed from 2 of the 8 lots, and then it just all stopped. And when I got in touch with the Coastside, with fire marshal with the fire district, they said that issue has been sent over to the board of directors, and I've written a letter to the board of directors. We'll see what ends up happening with that. But apparently this process where they were supposed to be sending 3 letters over the course of 3 months, and then if they didn't do the property owners didn't do the work, then they were going to be fined and sent over to the San Mateo County District Attorney. So it looks like the process has stalled. I'm still trying to determine if that's the case. Big picture here with that is that my plan was, it's been exactly 3 months since that had happened. I wanted to piggyback off of what Danny had started, but I didn't want to do it on some of these lots behind our houses, as Donna Lynn was saying, that are just extremely dense, a lot of ground fuel. You barely, in some of them, can even step onto the lots to even have any trees removed. And so, and Danny doesn't know this, we've just recently talked with a property owner back there. We're not going to be able to actually remove trees but we are going to have them remove some limbs, and just got, a quote from New Sky, and that's, we're piggybacking off of what Danny's work, and I wasn't included in his numbers when he was talking with you. It's not trees, it's large branches that are getting very close to our home. And I know that there's problems with just doing branches and not the whole tree, because then we'll have to try to maintain that over the years. But this is all that we can kind of do right now because of, quite frankly, Coastside Fire Protection District not able to finish what they said that they were going to be doing. I'm going to continue with that process of working with them to see if we can get that to happen.
It seems fairly apparent to me that effectively limbing one of these Eucalyptus giganticus while leaving the top intact leaves a much less fire prone tree. And it doesn't involve a whole bunch of rebranching because you've left the top intact. We have seen along the boulevard the gradual removal where you create poles and then you remove them 30 feet at a time. Anytime you top them like that, yeah, a lot of resprouting occurs, and that's a maintenance problem, more so than leaving an intact tree that has been thoroughly limbed, I think.
Okay, so so what we're thinking of doing is just limbing them and leaving the rest of the tree intact.
Yep.
Okay.
That'll work much
And that
better.
is surprisingly by accident what we're doing. Thank you, Danny.
Okay, and thank you, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Next, I'll go to Dave.
I just wanted to respond to Donna Lynn, or no, sorry, Susan. The Coastside Fire Protection District does have the ability, if a property owner does not respond to the requests to trim brush, to actually contract it out, do it themselves, and put a lien on the property as well, and that shows up on property tax bills as well. But they do have to go through the 3-month process first. That's more commonly done on grassy lots that are infill vacant lots, but they do have that capability of contracting the work done themselves if the property owner doesn't do it. But it does have to go through this process. I don't know if they explain that to you or not, but that is regularly done here on the coast.
Sorry, my sound cut out for a moment there. Did you finish, Dave?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, Jill Grant.
Thank you, Michelle. I wanted to thank Susan for her excellent letter, which she included the MCC council members on. It was very well written and I love it. I think it's very productive. And Donna Lynn, I feel your frustration. It's very frustrating to want to get good things done and have to wait them out. With regard to to what Dave was just saying about the fire district having some recourse, other counties, they have a certain date where, every year, maybe it's by April, 5th, you have to have your property managed, or they'll send you a letter. And then the next month you get the second letter, and the third month you get the third letter, and then they just fine you. And it's every year. And so all the property owners are used to it, and they get into the groove of things. And I think that our county is heading that way, where it's just an annual, it's like weed abatement. They'll have tree abatement. At least I'm hoping we're heading in that direction. And I also hope that the county will, match homeowners in the cost and take some of the money that they're, getting and help these homeowners. I think it's really important. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Next, Greg.
I just want to say, in part because of Susan's bringing this issue up months ago, it is one of the logged wildfire issues. I've had some unsuccessful interactions with CAL FIRE, but I just reached out, piggybacking on Susan's email, to the director of the Coastside Fire Protection District, and I'll keep trying to see if I can get in contact. Apparently, there's been some difficulty getting response. But I think we ought to consider it as a future agenda item. Just a thought. I mean, it's been on the list for a while, and they're not apparently either inclined or they're not moving fast enough. I don't know what other priorities they have. It seems like a simple thing to do.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Next, Dan.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I know this is my third question. Danny, your neighboring park there, Quarry Park. Just yesterday, I walked the loop up to the Vista Point and then back down. And I'm guessing that you've walked through there as well. Maybe, maybe not. But if you did, I was wondering if you recently, if you've seen what has been done by the county, if you had some comments.
I haven't gone that far into it. Lately, I take the near loop from Delphine and cross up to the GGNRA and come back down. So I haven't seen the recent work.
Yeah, the road seems to be widened, but there's still a lot of trees. That's the short of it.
No, I actually, Dan, share the same vision that you do, is basically a machine large enough to mow through and take out a large contiguous gap of fuel between all of El Granada Boulevard and Quarry Park from top to bottom. And I keyed in on the first question in the new business where somebody was asking about a log getting away from a contractor down at the Miramar site. I don't have anything to say about that other than, yeah, safety first. But as much as we talk about El Granada Boulevard and how the break isn't contiguous and there are trees running right up to it from some of Quarry Park, Miramar looks like a nightmare to me from a satellite view. And yeah, I think everywhere Quarry Park runs within a couple 100 feet of the houses has to be dealt with, hopefully as soon as possible, because I share your view. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when there's an ignition that really runs amok.
Thank you, Danny.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll go to Susan Casey.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Dave Olson, I just wanted to reply back to you with what your comment was. And it has been 3 months. There should have been 3 letters sent out. There should have been some information from the Coastside Fire Protection District. I requested that a month ago just to start to get an update. And that's when I was told by the fire marshal's office that it was handed over to the board of directors. And I reached out to one of the board of directors that's heading up the vegetation management, in El Granada and on the coast. And I didn't get a reply as to the status of these 8 plots in the back of our house. And so I have been actively following up and I haven't been getting an answer. So, and then I did notice that on one of the board meetings recently, they did the whole weed abatement recovery of the $27,000. And they never mentioned this other ordinance, which is ordinance number 2019-03. And it's a particular section in there which allows for not weed abatement, but the removal specifically on eucalyptus sites, undeveloped sites that are have other ground fuel there. And some of these parcels are just so full of extremely dense where you just cannot even walk on them because they just haven't been, it hasn't been enforced and they haven't been touched by property owners. So yeah, so I thought, I sort of started to think that should be at this point right now where they should be starting to go to the district attorney, and I'm just not getting an answer yet, but I have written this letter, so we'll see.
Okay, thank you, Susan. And I did want to say that I was on a meeting with Austin Seeley yesterday where he did mention this, and
and seemed to indicate, I'm not sure if it's official yet, but seemed to indicate that they would be doing a one-time assessment where they would go out and identify lots that had trees growing that would potentially be a fire hazard, similar to the weed abatement program. But doing this at one time, identifying areas and potentially even removing the trees themselves and charging back to the property owners for that. So I'm not going to speak for him that that's like a for sure thing, but it definitely sounded like that's something that they're working toward. And so I think it's really important for us as the MCC to follow up on that, and by the next meeting have a report back, or if there isn't progress, then we could potentially write a letter. So
What I
thank
was
you for-
told, yeah, what I was told is that it's on a per request basis, and that it would be great if they could do a one-time blanket for all of those lots back there. It absolutely would be. And Austin, I think, would be the person that could do it if they do have the manpower. That's I think the key.
Yeah. Okay. So we will follow up on that.
Thank you.
For our next meeting. I want to close out this topic because we're reaching almost the end of when we had planned for this, but it looks like Fran has her hand raised. So we'll go to Fran and then we'll wrap this one up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Fran Pollard. And thank you, Danny. That was a great presentation and very efficient. I just want to clarify a couple of things. I don't know if you said this. How long did it take once they started cutting? How long did it take to cut them all?
It's in a straightforward fashion, just a 3 or 4 week job. We had a 2-week good start, and then 2 weeks of downtime due to wet dripping weather, and then another week and a half of good work. And the latest update from today is there was about 4 or 5 days worth of dry work left for it to be completed. So I'd say 4 weeks overall of dry weather. That was the other interruption was part of the site was off limits due to the spotting of a nest of a protected bird. So the things come up, but yeah, this is a 3 or 4 week job of work from beginning to end, if it can be done in that fashion.
That was 40 trees, did you say?
Yep.
40 trees and 40, so about 4 weeks. Okay. And you are leaving the stumps, but you need
the stumps will be taken down to the ground level, but the roots will be left intact.
Yeah, because you don't want to cause landslide or anything, but you do have to put some chemical on to kill any regrowth.
We could treat with chemicals, and I'm thinking of glyphosate, but I don't want to use that on the stumps next to the redwood trees that I'm saving. And in reality, a tarp that is plastic and impermeable will do the job. All we have to do is prevent them from seeing sunlight for a year or two, and they won't regrow. So it's just a matter of going out, spending the money on tarps, putting them down, weighting them down, and then cleaning them up in a couple of years.
Good, thank you. That's the main thing, that they don't regrow or
Right.
10 more sprout for every tree. I know that's what's happened in the past. That's why it's such a jungle now. Let me see if I think I had one more. You're not leaving the chips on the ground, huh? For mulch?
We are blowing mulch all over the valley.
Okay.
And yeah.
And well, I would just say this seems much more efficient. Didn't the county say that it was 10,000 a tree and it could take all day for one tree?
Yeah.
It seems we ought to recommend this one.
I asked about that, and it sounded as though there are 2 qualified bidders for those jobs. I think with 5 or 6 qualified bidders, that cost would come down somewhat.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Fran. We need to close out this topic. Dan, I see you have your hand raised. You've already spoken 3 times.
Can I just add something really fast? Is this really
yes.
fast? It's helpful for everybody. Danny, I just wanted to commend you for the tarp idea, but I also want to caution you that they may sprout from some of the root systems. So I imagine you probably already know this, and you expect to be able to kind of just walk through the area and just break any sprouts that potentially happen. Eventually, with time, the root system loses the energy, and it just gives up. And it sounds like you already know that from nodding your head. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, that's good information to have. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you very much, Danny, for this presentation. It was really, really helpful. I think we all learned a lot. It seems like you updated those after pictures since we got the presentation for our website. So it'd be
Yep.
great to get an update.
Just this
Post
afternoon,
that.
it was updated. Yep, I believe the website now has the slides that I just presented.
Yes,
Okay.
it does, as of
Yep.
this afternoon. Or
Thanks.
Oh,
actually
weird. I
this
just
evening.
uploaded it. We should
Oh,
check that.
I'll leave that for you to resolve. Thanks, Dave, for the
Or
help.
downloaded it. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there may be a
Everyone's
browser
looking.
cache issue because it's the same name.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. We're going to move on to our next topic, which is drought on the Midcoast. This is something that we haven't explored yet, but that I know has been a hot topic, both, you know, all along the whole western part of the U.S. And I think it's been an important topic that the water districts and sanitary districts have explored. And so Greg has put together a presentation and he's going to walk us through this. So I'll hand it over to you, Greg. We can't hear you.
Turns out you can't turn on your microphone when you're already sharing your screen.
I think it goes
Let's
up
see if
to the
this
top of the screen, but yeah.
I wasn't able to get it.
Again.
Okay, are we good there?
I can see
Yep.
it.
Can everybody see it?
Yep.
Okay, so I've researched this topic on and off for years, but I'm not a professional hydrologist. However, I've interviewed some of them, and I welcome feedback from the community on errors and completeness and whether I'm asking the right questions. Whatever we're going to do or not here is going to require some collective will, and is certainly going to have collective consequences for you, the quality of your life and the cost of living here. So I'm just going to run through these topics quickly. The real difficult issues are in the questions and next steps. So I'm going to run through some slides which contain material you might have read elsewhere. It turns out the longest droughts in California have been 140 and 220 years and killed off several civilizations like the Anasazi and the Mayans. Those droughts occurred during a global shift in climate. The temperature globally was not actually any hotter than it is today. In fact, the temperature in the US back when these droughts occurred was similar to 1961 to 1990. And right now we're hotter by 2 degrees Fahrenheit. So the implication is that with the current man-made, human-caused climate crisis, as opposed to naturally occurring climate change, things are actually going to be more extreme going forward. So I just wanted to flag that. This is just an example showing that the temperature now is in fact a couple of degrees hotter than it was 1960 to 1990. And again, that 1960 to 1990 period was when that was the temperature when those long droughts occurred in California. Recently, we've entered a period here of extreme drought. However, the entire Southwest has been in a mega drought for about 22 years. What's interesting about this slide is if you look at the table on the far right-hand side, 1 year ago, none of the West was in the highest category of drought called exceptional drought, and only 3.29% of it was in the extreme drought category. But today, 65% of the West Coast is in either extreme drought or the top category that exists. There is no higher category called exceptional drought. There are also some people talking about this being the worst drought in 1,200 years. I find that debatable because it hasn't gone on long enough yet, given that longer droughts of over a century occurred. There's one other thing going on, though, besides the fact that it's extremely dry and drier than it has been in 1,200 years. There's something called the Bay Delta Plan, which was a lawsuit. You can say the fish got a good lawyer. In order to preserve the Tuolumne River, they're going to mandate a certain amount of water flow through the river, even in dry years. And the result of that would be cutbacks from San Francisco Public Utilities Commission of up to 51 to 68% of their dry year water availability, depending on how many years the drought lasts and so forth. This plan has been delayed for years. I believe we're up to 4 years delay now because of 2 San Francisco Public Utility Commission lawsuits. Nonetheless, SFPUC and the agency that buys the water from SFPUC, it's named BOSQUA, they are publishing that they expect this plan to kick in 2023. The bottom line is nobody really knows how bad the droughts will be, so all these numbers we're throwing around, are open to question. But if you use water from Half Moon Bay, the CCWD water system, and that's everybody in El Granada, for example, then you're facing this uncertainty and these risks. This is just a quick map of how the water comes from the Sierras across the bay and over to Half Moon Bay and El Granada. Half Moon Bay, the published statistic was gets 61% of their water from either Crystal Springs or the Pilarcitos reservoir. The rest of it, of course, there's Denniston Creek and some other local aquifers. And some of the water in those reservoirs is replenished by normal Bay Area precipitation. It's not dependent on the Sierra snowpack. I'm not sure what the percentage in drought years would be. Because I've read that Denniston Creek is virtually useless in a drought, the percentage of water that Half Moon Bay is dependent on might be much higher than 61% in drought years. This is just a picture of the Hetch Hetchy system. Precipitation there is low. It's nearing the worst in 1977. And of course, that goes into the storage up in Hetch Hetchy. In the Bay Area, which is the precipitation that all of the Montera and Moss Beach people rely on, you can see that we have extremely low precipitation in the current year. This also again affects Half Moon Bay because they need some of this precipitation to fall into Crystal Springs and Pilarcitos reservoirs, and it's very low. This is a chart showing the amount of water from the Tuolumne River that's currently available to San Francisco. These charts, by the way, were given to me by a director on one of the water boards that I consulted with in writing this presentation. And so this number, and you can see how low the Tuolumne River flow is right now, is before the Bay Delta plan's being implemented. There has been an executive order, a drought executive order by the governor that includes San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. All, well, not all, but the vast majority of people living in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties and part of Alameda get their water from Hetch Hetchy. Note that this water emergency does not include San Francisco because in fact, Hetch Hetchy's reservoir level is actually at a decent level, but it's not getting any more precipitation and the snowpack is low. So next year, I expect to see San Francisco in a similar situation. So what's the future look like given the climate crisis? Well, I've been told several times by several people, and I'll use this as a quote, the entire water system in the state of California was designed for a hydrology that no longer exists. And if you attended Senator Berman's webinar, one of the participants said it was designed for 10 million people, and we have 40 million. There is also language in the urban water management plans that are produced, just were recently released by the Pacifica North Coast County Water and Half Moon Bay Coastside County. The language says the median annual runoff at Hetch Hetchy would decrease by about 8% by 2040 and by about 25% to 29% by 2100. And that in critically dry years, those reductions in annual runoff at Hetch Hetchy would be significantly greater, with runoff decreasing up to 46.5% by 2100. So what the simulations on this chart show is that the snowpack that we're likely to get as we march forward into the future, by 2090, the snowpack will be 0 to 10%, maybe 15% of what it used to be in a normal year. And so that means we don't have the time release mechanism of snowpack giving us water throughout the year. We need to be storing it when it falls. Now, the BOSQA agency has produced numbers that are given to all members. And I just did a little math off of one of their tables. And you can see that what they're saying is in the third consecutive dry year, the cutbacks would amount to 59.5% of the water normally available. That is, 40.5% would be left. And by no coincidence, this chart from Coastside County Water District also shows at the far right side that depending on the year of the drought and the length of the drought, a shortfall of 59% would occur. What is interesting is that those projections assume that we are going to increase the conservation per capita by 17% by 2040. I know this slide says 2045, but it's 2040. So if we were not able to conserve an additional 17% per person, then that 59% shortage would presumably be a 76% cutback. Now, you can always get more water. And in fact, there's over a dozen projects taking typically 10 to 30 years and costing a lot of money. The costs are published as unknown, as well as the ongoing operation, maintenance, and so forth. So nobody really knows how much it's going to cost, but it will be significant. Right now, just to give you a feel for what those costs might amount to, I don't know if you know, but 20% of all the electricity used every year in the state of California is just for moving water. So these projects will be significant, both in construction and operation and maintenance costs. So I hope I made that point that the forecasts are assuming increased conservation of 17%. Otherwise, the shortage would be worse. This slide, and there's a bunch of slides like this, just shows that alternative water supplies, whether it's stormwater capturing or recycling or desalination, the estimates for the cost of that incremental water range from 5 to 7 to 10 times. One of the speakers at Senator Becker and Assemblyman Berman both held webinars. One of the speakers was the director of Valley Water. When he spoke at Becker's seminar, he was talking about the water cost was 10 times what he was normally paying. When he spoke at Berman's seminar a few weeks later, he said, I can't get any more water. There isn't any more. So while we can get water and while we can wait 10 to 30 years to develop new reservoirs and all these alternative sources, it is going to cost a lot more money. We have another issue locally. We don't really know what the situation is with the well owners. Appears that they're largely unmetered, And there's even a story that I'll tell. I spoke at the Montero Water and Sanitary District, geez, it might have been a month ago. And I had called for a moratorium on new connections until we understand what's going on, what the sustainable level of water supply is, until we could impose secondary water rights on new joiners and make sure that the new joiners paid the incremental cost of the new water rather than the average rate, so the rest of us weren't subsidizing it. It turns out somebody else called for a moratorium. It was a property owner with a well in Moss Beach area, and he's worried that his well is going to run dry. And one of the reasons he's really concerned is he has a property in Half Moon Bay, and he's trucking water from his property up here down to Half Moon Bay. So you can see the potential for individual wells undermining the common good, the reservoir that we all share, if we don't do something about it. There's another issue that occurs in many of these urban water management plans. It has to do with affordable housing and priority uses. And I don't think it's well defined, but the concept is something called reserve water. There was once in the CCWD Urban Water Management Plan 5 years ago, a statement that about 15% of the water is reserved. Now, if that were truly reserved and that cutback we talked about occurred because of severe drought for 3 or 5 years, and if we didn't get the 17% conservation they're hoping for, so the cutback was 76%, but if 15% of the water was reserved, that's 91%. So something needs to be done about reserved water, the definition of reserved water, and the rights that current water users have compared to new joiners. We already talked about the cost of incremental water being an issue. And here's a statement from Felicia Marcus, who used to run the State Water Resources Board. We can't conserve our way out of this drought. So we need alternative sources of supply, and we need to reduce demand. Montero is in a slightly different position. They have their own watershed, their own aquifers. They did their last study in 2017. The main aquifer in Montero is the Alta Vista well. The hydrologist report presented a few years ago, and there can be arguments about the carbon dating techniques they used, but they were drawing water that was 1,000 to 3,000 years old at the end of the last drought in 2016, which was the 4th year. And so the district did the logical thing. It reduced the flows to preserve the aquifer. Montero has consistently said things are fine. They also consistently have said we need to continue to conserve. And by a strange coincidence, at the recent meeting, the attorney gave a report on the steps required to initiate a connection moratorium. So that raises the question in my mind, if everything's fine, then who gave the order to think ahead about a connection moratorium? So I'm concerned. So this is the tough part for me. What are the right questions to be asking? And I've listed a bunch of them on this chart, including what are the initial and perpetual costs of additional water that is going to be required for the current population, and then the new joiners, and who's going to pay? What is the capacity of Montero's aquifers? Because they are all alone. The CCWD and the rest of the people have some hope that throughout the system that Bosco administers, there'll be some water sharing and distribution that could maybe ease things, but Montero is on its own. One question is, if we need to conserve now, then why are we allowing more connections? And the other related question is, if we're okay on the supply of water, then why do we need to conserve? And a question that's been asked of me is, why should we continue conservation if the savings just go to new joiners who undermine the ongoing water security and affordability and keep pushing us toward the carrying capacity of our system? There are other questions that I've listed here about whether or not we've passed the carrying capacity of the state, the county, the region, whether new joiners should have the same water rights as existing users, whether existing ratepayers should pay the higher incremental costs of the new water required by new joiners, because that's the way things are done right now. All the costs are blended, so that incremental expensive water gets averaged into your rates. I've been asked, is this a zero-sum game where somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose? And I'll throw in one about why can't we just all get along? To me, this question of sustainability is really the survival of our civilization. While we can add more water at much increased cost, the affordability and quality of life here will both be jeopardized. And also those supply additions can take decades. And the risks and the costs of all of everything I'm talking about are not included in the water agency plans. There's a lot about supply, but I don't see anything in there about the incremental costs or cost guarantees or assurances. So in addition to a risk of a supply issue, we also have the risk of a cost issue. And so I'm throwing this out to the council. Before I do, I just want to mention that in preparing this, I consulted with members of 4 different water boards, and with one exception, everybody I've traded this information with has said, you've got it right, you know, or they support what I'm saying and so forth. I'll get to that exception in a minute. So just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about what we do. Well, maybe there are more questions we should be asking. One thing we can do is do nothing. The other thing is to gather community input, which I hope we're doing now. I think we could request testimony from the experts on their own situations. We don't have any statutory authority to do that. As far as I understand, those water agencies are on their own, but they might be willing to explain situations. I would like to see an updated supply assessment from Montera. They did one in 2017, and given the changes in the climate, I think it'd be worthwhile to update it. And again, you know, I'd really like to see all connections halted until we know what the sustainable level of supply is and can compare that with the current demands we have. And then there's letters, petitions, ballot initiatives, and there's a film which some people in Pacifica have found called Rivers End, apparently an excellent explanation of the California water system. And it's kind of a pre-release thing, but for $300, you can get a private screening. And I already have somebody who's volunteered to match all contributions up to $150. So if we want to put up $300 or a bunch of people are interested, we could have a screening of that film to provide more expert testimony. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now and just make one more comment, if you don't mind, which is this is controversial. And I, again, I'm not going to claim that I understand everything about everything. One of the comments I got, the one negative one, was this. If the point is to build a case to put a halt to development, the case shouldn't be built on unsubstantiated fear-mongering about water supply availability. So I'll let you guys all think about whether this was unsubstantiated fear-mongering or whether we have a real issue here and what you and the community want to do about this, if anything.
Okay, thank you, Greg, for that presentation. I'm going to go around to people who have questions. For this, I do want to have clarifying questions from the council first before we go to the public for their questions and comments, and then we can go back to a discussion among the council, since we do need to think about what next steps, if any, we take on this. So I'll start with Dan.
Okay, Michelle, I guess they're not really clarifying questions. So
Do you want to hold off? Are they you want to
general questions relating to the topic that I want?
If they're questions, then you can go ahead, but let's hold any sort of statement of opinion until the end.
Okay, great. So, yeah, Greg, thank you very much. Sorry, this is an opinion. You did a great job educating the community here and this community and beyond. So I want to thank you for, first of all, there. So, you know, I want to, since you're on top of this, I wanted to hear if you had any input or any knowledge of, I heard some stories that state of California is allowing salt water to go further up the river, affecting wildlife in the whole drought with pumping water for whatever is needed. And also, this is another story I heard. I haven't had it confirmed, but up in the foothills that they're not allowing for rain harvesting and saving water to help for new developments. And I understand it's a complicated issue because developments sometimes help the economy, but clearly it also affects the quality of life of many communities. So I was wondering if you could have you heard anything about these two items?
Well, I can only comment on the saltwater intrusion based on what I've read. Yes, it's an issue. It's an issue here on the coast, potentially on aquifers. It's also an issue upstream and in the bay. I don't know what to make of it at the present time. I will comment that what I've read and heard in presentations from Montera is that there's no risk of saltwater intrusion on the Alta Vista aquifer up in the mountain because it's high enough. I can't speak to the airport wells. There have been hydrology reports done in 2002, 2003, and 2010 on various aspects of the Midcoast. Note that all of those are out of date. And if the climate information I have is right, the 10 hottest years in the world are the last 10. So a study from 2010 or older may not be current enough to make decisions properly about the Midcoast water situation. As far as the other point, I can't comment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Len?
Yeah, a clarification question, Greg, but first I thought it was a very complete and good presentation of your topic issue, drought. But do you have in mind, is this strictly informational, or having pulled this together, do you really have in mind a particular one or two things that you think the council should consider for action, or is it ultimately just information?
It's informational now. I obviously have opinions and I have some suggestions, but I want to hear from the council and I want to hear from the community because it's going to have to be a collective action, whatever we decide to do.
But will you be sharing those within the conclusion?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
yeah, I don't want to say I'll share them today, but I think we could
No,
make a recommendation afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay, any other clarifying questions from the council? Okay, I'll move on to public comment. If any member of the public would like to comment or ask questions about this topic, please go ahead and raise your hand.
Okay.
Okay, Fran Pollard. Go ahead, Fran.
Thank you,
3
Greg.
minutes.
Thank you, Greg, again for that. Very scary. But you know, we've said for years that water is going to be the new oil, and you know they spend a fortune to pump oil. Why can't we do that? With all these states that get flooded every year, pump the water from those states and bring it here and have it here constantly. I've talked to lots of friends about something like that, and everybody agrees. Yeah, why can't we do something like that?
Well, my first reaction would be, no, I haven't looked into that, but my first reaction would be we're already spending 20% of the electricity in the state of California just to move the water downhill, with the exception of lifting it over the mountains into LA. I can't imagine with the mountain ranges we have what the cost of something to move water from somewhere else over here would be. It seems like a big deal.
Well, we do it with oil. Why not with water?
But not in the same volume.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fran. Anyone else want to make a public comment? Okay, I see Susan Casey has her hand raised. Go ahead, Susan, you have 3 minutes.
I guess it's just more of a question. A couple years ago, the things that we hear about, how much water is being wasted because of leaks, and Greg, have you heard anything about that, or have anything to report about all the leaks that are going on, and if they were truly being able to be plugged, would the situation improve?
So there is a statistic in the urban water management plans for every agency called water loss. Okay. And this is a combination of things like fire departments testing hydrants, leaks, stuff that doesn't get billed or somehow gets ripped off, like construction sites often open fire hydrants and take water without permit. At least it's been known to happen. The water loss statistics in Pacifica and Half Moon Bay are reasonable by agency standards. At one point, one of those agencies was pretty high, but they're both in the 8 or 9% range and coming down. There is a continued effort to try and reduce those further. So it's getting attention, but I don't think it'll ever get to zero. And I think the most we can hope for is a couple 3% improvement from what they've already done based on the statistics that they're providing.
Okay, thank you. All right, last call for any public comment on this. All right, I don't see any other members of the public with their hands raised, so we will move to discussion among the council. I'll start with Dave.
I've already forgotten why I raised my hand, something that Greg was saying. But in answer to Fran, yeah, Greg's answer about volumes is absolutely correct. We need far more water than oil, and it would be, if you look at the total cost of the Central Valley projects, pumping water from the Delta down to LA and double, triple, or quadruple it, that's what you'd be looking at. And at that point, you're probably thinking that desalinization would be cheaper. I remembered. So we do already have saltwater intrusion problems here on the coast. I was on a well in Montera on 6th Street, right above the highway. Our intake was 90 feet below sea level. We did not have much of a saltwater problem. Detectable amounts of salt, but not much. But 1 street away, the neighbor had to shut down their well and go on MWSD water even before the moratorium was lifted, because it had become so badly salty that it was absolutely unusable. So it is happening in areas. I would be a little concerned about people pumping water in Moss Beach and trucking it to Half Moon Bay. I strongly suspect they are exceeding what is allowed under their water rights. But that's not for me to say, that's for the county to say. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I want to continue going around the council. If you want to speak next, definitely raise your hand. I see that Claire has her hand raised, so go to you.
I may have something else to say about something later, but I don't know who it was. Was it Susan? It just asked something about leaks and how that related to the water supply. I was wondering if they were talking about the leaks in the sewer system that we had problems with before, or if they were just talking about water loss in general.
The water loss statistics have to do with supply, not with the sewer system.
No, but I wanted to know if the person that asked that question was thinking about the sewer system or if they were thinking about water in general. I don't even, was it
Just,
you
I was thinking about water.
in general?
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
good, thank you. It did occur to me though that this is a related problem. I think people have brought up that the sewer system needs a certain amount of water flow to operate properly. And that's another thing to keep in mind as we reduce our water supply and water use. But that's all I'll say for right now. I might want to come back later.
Okay, next I'll go to Dan.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say I'm certainly not an expert, but in response to Fran's idea, whatever's not in the Colorado River is taken from Northern California to help Southern California. And so if there's anything, I mean, yes, I agree with many people that it's, it may not be feasible to pump from other areas, but maybe in other parts of the country, just for discussion, if there is some water, trapped in some areas, it's, that could be pumped into the river and then flow down the Colorado River to feed Southern California. Or actually, I think I more likely believe that the natural underwater systems kind of with gravity kind of have an equilibrium and kind of balance. But I do not know. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. And that's it. Thank you.
If I could just comment, I mean, it's a whole separate topic, but the Hoover Dam and the Colorado River system is under extreme stress. The water may be so low there that they can't produce power shortly. And on top of that, there are communities in Utah, both that A, have shut down development, and B, are not only trying to develop, they're trying to take water away from the Utes, the Indian or Native American tribe that has water rights. There's a huge conflict brewing because if Utah gets this extra water, then they're upstream and there's going to be that much less for Arizona and California. So stay tuned for that water war because that's an ongoing thing.
Okay, let's go to Len.
So earlier on in clarification, I asked Greg to give his one or two lead points where he would like to see action from the MCC. But prior to saying that, I guess focusing on wildfire quite a bit and not other things, I've been struck by the fact that really we have a fire board here and the fire department, and really part of the issue is how we've seen concerns about how they perform as well as commendable statements. But looking ahead, what's the best way to work there with a synergy with that body? So are you, in your ideas, are you thinking of something that would complement or coordinate with the existing water boards, or is it in a separate direction you think we should go?
The first thing I think I would do is get the water boards to speak on their own to the fact base. I've already been in, what do you want to call it? Question and answers with CCWD and North Coast County Water, not with Montera, about the meaning and implications of their reports. I think it would be useful to have an agreed fact foundation and to find out why, for example, they aren't including cost considerations in their planning, why there isn't a definition of sustainable supply. And of course, that could be really difficult. I mean, maybe the answer is 0. So that's the first thing I think I'd want to do, but I don't know what kind of cooperation we're going to get from the other water boards because, we're not the boss of them. And at some point, I think we have to raise this issue above us. And I don't know if the county or the state is the right place to go. This also intersects with the issue of housing. And you can imagine the conflict that's going to be existing when we talk about housing. So right now, I just want to try and clarify some things with other water agencies and hope I get cooperation. And I was hoping one of you would have a great idea about how to motivate people to do something and how we galvanize a fragmented governance system involving separate water agencies. I will throw in one more comment on fire. One of the comments I received like 3 times on the people I circulated drafts of this to was, you didn't mention the lack of firefighting water storage. We're going to need more. We don't have enough, especially in Montara. Well, I didn't mention that because Montara disputes that, and they are following the fire code, and the fire code requires them to have only enough water for 1 2-hour designer fire. You know, it's arguable that maybe they should have more. CAL FIRE seems to think they should have more, but it's not in the fire code. Certainly the new developments that are planned will involve dense housing, larger structures, will require more firefighting water storage. So that kind of overlaps the issue of wildfire a little bit. But the general statement that will be made by, for instance, Montara is, our storage is not designed to fight a wildfire. It's only designed to fight the kinds of home fires that you see. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I'll go to Dan.
Yeah, Greg, I just want to say I agree. It's a major concern. Thank you again for bringing all of this up. It's a major concern for all of California, but also our community. And again, you know, thanks for really your insight here and your all the work that you've done.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Thank you, Greg. Not hearing a lot of clear next steps out of this. I mean, I know, Greg, you have some ideas, but nothing definitive. If any other member of the council would like to provide, you know, their thoughts in terms of the direction that we could take on this, please go ahead. I see Claire has her hand raised. Go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, this is such a huge topic. We could go in any number of directions. But if we're going to basically confine ourselves to our immediate surroundings, it seems like the first thing we need is more answers to what the situation actually is. And the most logical thing would be to invite our 2 water agencies to come talk with us. I don't know what they're going to say. I don't think we should worry that we don't have jurisdiction over them. They're part of the community, as are we, and we would like to get some answers as to what the situation is. I think we should just invite them and hope that they can give us more information so we can decide what to do next.
I agree with Claire.
So
That's
Claire,
a great idea, Claire.
for your
Let's wait.
question, so just I want to clarify, Claire, are you saying we should have either a presentation by a water board or a joint meeting? What are you suggesting?
I was thinking of using our usual procedure and inviting them to come present the state of their, you know, their purview.
Would it be good to have both water boards at the same time?
I think it would be. I don't know if it would be a great idea to do it that way, but if that could be done smoothly, it would be good. If not, they could come sequentially.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Claire. That's a great idea. Go ahead, Greg, and then I'll go to Jill after that.
Well, one thing that we often do is assign a subcommittee. One question I have is there anybody else that feels they have an interest or aptitude, knowledge base in this area that would want to consult with me about, you know, the future plans and directions? So that's the first thing I would ask.
I would if nobody else did.
Okay. And then to your point about inviting them to come, I have several things that need to be clarified. For instance, the conservation statistics down in in CCWD, I can't make sense out of what they're showing. And I've had back and forth with them about the meaning of their numbers. So it might make sense to come up with a list of questions, which you and I could work on. And maybe we would even have a working session with one of those agencies to see what their reaction to the questions was, what they could prepare. And then after we've done that, and we have some frame of reference defined, we'd ask them to come make a presentation. I don't know what the thoughts are, the rest of you.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan to go forward. Let's go to Jill. I know she had her hand raised for a bit.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Greg. That was wonderful. And I love all the pictures, especially the one of Hetch Hetchy, because I've worked there for many years. And I commend you for putting this together and presenting such details. The one thing that stuck out was when you bring up moratoriums. I don't know that much about them, but what I've seen in my life is that when that word comes up in conversation, people get upset and angry. And I think there's enough stress during these pandemic times. We don't need to bring up something that'll just anger the community, but it is a valid point. I personally would not want to go that way. I do think we should pressure those in power to look at using federal funds to reduce our water use. I know that San Francisco received a large number of money from federal funds, and they're right now taking all their irrigation lines and they're converting them to recycled water. So Oceanside plant is having construction to treat all that, treat the water and then recycle it and put it back out. And the Golden Gate Park will be all recycled water for the plantings, irrigations, and the golf courses in San Francisco, all recycled water. So I think federal funding would be good if we could get that infrastructure here to use, recycled water. But we don't have as many, we do have golf courses, but we don't have as many big parks like San Francisco. However, residential use, at one time it was trendy to have your shower and tub water recycled and used outdoors for your irrigation. I don't know if you remember that. It was really huge in Berkeley. And there was something you could install and it would convert it and use it outside. I think if homeowners had, maybe a tax write-off or some sort of financial incentive to do that again, that might be a good way to reduce water use. So I really like the idea of recycling water. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Those are great points. Okay, next I'll go to Dave.
Couple things. Recycled water has been an off and on again hot topic with all the sewer districts and SAM here for many years. Rick Lohman, who was at GCSD and now is at MWSD, has been a big proponent of that for a long time. It died the last time around because the only place locally that could use it in any quantity with the amount of salts and other things still left in it was the golf course at the Ritz. And financially, they just couldn't make it work out. There was also some bickering about where any funds from recycled water would go. It has been brought back up again at the SAM board by the various agencies, and they're looking at it again. Technology has moved on. So it's in progress. Whether it will go anywhere this time or not is a much harder question. And the use of recycled water is a real problem. San Jose has done a lot of that with their parklands, but you really need a big area to make it financially viable. I mean, there's only so many water trucks that you can drive up and then use recycled water. And as far as gray water, the county definitely allows for that, as well as they're promoting the whole rain barrel and rain garden system, which helps when we do get rain. and it's not all that expensive. I know people who have done substantial amounts of gray water on their own, but again, it's a relatively small amount, and you do have to be careful because some things that you might use it on will not survive soaps and things that are in the water, even the biodegradable soaps. So you're likely to save at most a few percent of water that way, which is not to say people shouldn't do it. A few percent here and there adds up. But yeah, so just wanted to comment on that.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Yeah, I'm looking to close this discussion pretty soon. So let's see, Dan has one more comment, and then we'll just go back to Greg to close it out.
Yeah,
Dan?
I'll just quickly say, I remember a conversation with this, it was a work related conversation, guy from England, and he had a great gray water system. And he told me that, his garden was like a jungle versus his neighbor's garden. The gray water system works really well because it doesn't have the chlorine in it. And I'll just stop there.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like Greg and Claire will work together. If anyone else would like to join them, feel free. Or if not, it can be the two of them, and look into potentially having the two local water districts come to a future meeting and then analyze any additional steps that we could take. Greg, did you have anything else to add?
It's been suggested that I should get a hydrologist to also speak to the issue of the Midcoast. And there's an expert guy at Balance Hydrologics. I don't know if he'll give me the time of day without me paying money for consulting, but I'm going to try and talk to him. I think his name is Barry Hecht, because there's an open question about whether there are any additional supplies that are unused on the Midcoast. And it's also an open question, as I mentioned, the age of the studies that currently are cited in the urban water management plans are, to me, badly out of date. And I'd like to get an expert opinion on whether or not we should have a more current survey of the water situation. For now, that's the limit of my thought process.
That sounds like a good direction to go. So yeah, please just let me know how those conversations go, and which meeting you would want to have this topic on the agenda again, and with what additional speakers. Okay, so that's the end of those two items. We do have the minutes that were moved to the regular agenda, and so we will address that now. Len, you were the one that requested that the minutes be moved. So I'll ask if you have any comments, and then I'll go to the public for any comments.
Well, specifically, I brought those forward at the request of two public members, so I would like to go to them directly.
Thank you. So members of the public, please raise your hand if you'd like to speak on the minutes. I'll go to Ann Martin first.
Good evening.
3 minutes.
Good evening. I just want to begin by thanking all of you for everything you do for the community. I mean, the more meetings I attend, the more I appreciate all the time and energy that you put into this. So thank you. On June 23rd, a couple of members of our community expressed during your public comments concerns about an unpermitted fence on an undeveloped lot in our neighborhood. It had been an outstanding violation for 4 years. We had only become aware in the last year or so that it was posing a traffic safety hazard and potentially a fire access hazard. And we asked for your help in encouraging the county to enforce this violation. For the July 8th meeting, we were kind of surprised to see, for the July 14th meeting, we were surprised to see it was on the agenda. And at that meeting, I spoke, and I specifically stated that on July 8th, the county had indeed issued a notice of violation to the property owner that they had until July 9th to apply for a coastal development permit or to remove the fence, and asked that the MCC support us in monitoring this enforcement action in light of the numerous delays that had happened over 4 years. I noticed Dave then stated that the owner had filed an application to legalize the fence. And I actually was surprised to hear that. I thanked him for letting me know. But when I checked the Acela site the next morning, I noticed that no application had been filed. Then in a subsequent conversation on July 20th with two high county officials, we learned that indeed the owner had not yet submitted an application for a coastal development permit. And I can only conclude that Dave made that statement at the July 14th meeting because the owner had told him he had filed a permit to legalize the fence. I would just like the minutes to be corrected to reflect what the county records showed as of July 14th, that the property owner had not yet filed his application to legalize the fence. And so, and I even have it restated for you. Basically, I asked that the minutes be amended to say that Dave said the owner had told him that he filed the permit to legalize the fence. And because this is a public forum and statements made in a public forum are really important, I thought it's important for the record that the minutes accurately reflect the status of an outstanding violation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Anne. I will just go to the other members who want to comment before we go back to Dave on this. So next, Genevieve Wartzman Show.
Thank you, Michelle, and good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to echo Anne's comments. The benefit of Zoom and pandemic times has been able to join these meetings, and really, fire safety is an utmost concern. So it's been really great to hear what's been going on in the community. That said, I also wanted to comment on the meeting minutes around the fence violation and the, I guess, Miramar dispute. First of all, thank you to Dave and Greg. I know that this took a tremendous amount of time and effort to investigate the matter. I'm sure as it became evident, as you started digging in, there's a number of years that are involved. There's a lot of history here. There's a number of litigations in the past, as well as clearly coupled with new and potentially emerging real estate matters and other I guess court matters, if you will, that have yet to be settled in court. And given the fact that this discussion happened in a public forum and is now a matter of public record, I wanted to request that there was one comment in the meeting minutes that might be amended to better reflect maybe the nature of the discussion and report that was presented. The particular statement that I was hoping could be amended was that Dave summarized that it's important to remember that we have heard from only one side of the story, and that it's difficult to determine actions with only some of the facts. And I could not agree more. My respectfully request that the statement be amended to state that we've only heard from the lot owner side of the story. Given the fact that Dave and Greg had the opportunity to talk with the lot owner directly, have a dialogue and exchange of ideas, but the 8 neighbors that have come to the MCC and spoken for 3 minutes in the public comment haven't had the same opportunity to have that dialogue. And we're just hoping that maybe the meeting minutes could be amended to reflect that this is the lot owner's perspective and reflective of that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next, I'll go to C. Blanton.
Hello. Yes, and I just also want to say thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I also wanted to comment on the meeting minutes from the July 14th meeting related to the Miramar dispute. Again, to reiterate what Genevieve was saying, that there is a lot of history and litigation surrounding this, a lot that's happened with the history here. And because this is a public forum and we know that it carries weight within the community and elsewhere, I would also like to request on to amend the comment made that relates to, and it was said, videos and other statements by the property owner that show vandalism and some acts of near violence were described. While we don't know all of the information shared by the property owners, we do know that the police have investigated some of these alleged acts of vandalism and near violence. And consequently, the police have filed related reports. And the coinciding reports indicate that the recent accusations of vandalism and near violence were false and held little to no merit. And we know that several of these allegations of vandalism and near violence are being used to instill fear of criminal activity or defame others. And so because of this and because of the weight that this carries, I'm asking that the minutes are amended to reflect that these are alleged acts of vandalism and alleged acts of near violence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. So we have 3 areas of the minutes that have been requested to be amended. Dave, who is the secretary and who wrote the minutes, should respond. So I'll hand it over to you, Dave. You're on mute.
So I will start by saying I have not spoken to the property owner. Greg, to my knowledge, is the only person on the council who has spoken to him. I would say that we have heard from both sides. We've heard from the property owner through Greg and some subsequent emails, but that was after the meeting. And we've heard from the neighbors at 2 different meetings in great length. So I would say that, you know, we have only heard from the neighbors live. We have not heard from the property owner at any meeting. And that is why I said we've only heard one side. So I completely stand by that statement, and the minutes should reflect it because that is in fact what I said. As far as changing the minutes to reflect events that happened outside the meeting, that is, in my opinion, completely inappropriate. I believe it's actually not in compliance with the Brown Act. They will certainly be in this meeting's minutes because they have been said at this meeting, but they were not said at the meeting on July 14th, and therefore it would be inappropriate to put them in the minutes for that meeting. As far as Ann's comments, I think I've addressed them in that I think I've addressed that. If people think I have not, then let me know and I'll go over it again.
What do you mean you think you've addressed that?
I think I've addressed Ann's comments on what occurred at the meeting versus what occurred outside the meeting.
Okay. I'm trying to find the area of the minutes that Anne commented on again.
Anne has
Okay.
her hand up.
I see. Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
scrolling back through the transcript to see if I can find it, make sure that
Yeah, I see it. Anne Martin, which is it should be spelled with an E. Spoke and said that none of the people who spoke were party to lawsuits and that a new violation order is open with regards to the fence. Dave said the owner
sorry.
has filed the permit to
Sorry.
legalize the fence.
Violation. So the violation was from 2017, and the property owner did subsequently file a planning permit to address that violation. The county was all set to close the violation based on that permit. And then they found out that there was another issue, and and that comment dates all the way back to late 2020. And as far as I can tell, it's been stalled at the county. I did not speak to the property owner, have not spoken to the planners. I don't know what they are waiting for. And as far as the July 8th incident, that was not something that either July 8th violation, that is not something that either Greg or I addressed at the meeting. So it would not be in any of our comments. I don't remember it occurring in Ann's comments, but I can certainly go back and look at the video and find out.
Okay, Anne would like to speak again, so go ahead, Anne.
Yeah, thank you. Dave, I guess my main concern here was that you had minutes say that you said, David said the owner has filed the permit to legalize the fence. And that in fact is not reflected either in the county system. And so I'm trying to figure out where you would have heard, how you would have drawn that conclusion that you would have been making that statement.
Because it is in the county system. I actually looked it up in Axela, and the Axela comments directly cite the violation number.
They cite
So why you can't find it, I don't know.
They cite the violation number, and they also state that in 2017, the property owner filed an application that was deemed incomplete.
That's completely different than the violation in the subsequent.
And the subsequent what? But the
planning permit that was filed in, I think it was 2019, to legalize the violation.
And that permit was never granted.
That's correct. It's still open.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect. And I have read this extensively. I have spoken to the county development director. He has told me that with respect to this violation, the property owner has not filed an application for a coastal development permit. If you're not willing to, so I don't quite understand. There's clearly a disagreement on the facts. I'm going by what the county is saying and by what the county records say.
I have not spoken to the county planners. I said that, but what I said was a planning permit was filed and that it was still open, and I did not know why it was still open.
I think the county record speaks for itself as to the record of delays, requests for a CDX that have gone on over 4 years with respect to this violation.
Okay, so that happened outside the meeting. It is not appropriate for the minutes.
Yeah, so the minutes should reflect what happened in the meeting. And even if I'm actually kind of curious because this happened with respect to a totally unrelated issue at the last meeting where Dave said something during the meeting about our website and the consequences of upgrading to Square, the next version of Squarespace. And he mentioned that we were 5 versions behind. In fact, we're only 2. What do you do in the case that you said one thing in the meeting and then you amended that later? I mean, to me, the meeting minutes should reflect what was said in the meeting, even if it's subsequently found to be incorrect.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this case, the meeting minutes do accurately reflect what Dave said in the meeting. Now, in this meeting's minutes, we can accurately reflect what Anne has said. We can reflect what you're saying in this meeting and this meeting's minutes. And so I'd say in terms of for that specific topic, in terms of amending last meeting's minutes, there shouldn't be any reason to do that because as Dave said, we don't amend the meeting minutes with something that was found subsequently. But so does that make sense to everyone?
So I'm sorry. So what you're saying is that basically these meeting minutes will reflect that I made a statement during comment that in fact there was the violation was still outstanding, and as of at least the 14th of July, there had been no application filed by the property owner for a CBT, a coastal development permit. That's fair enough.
Okay.
I guess I can accept that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anne. We have a couple other points to address, but let Len speak first.
Oh, as a person who brought forward this request of the residents, I'd not encountered this before. It's somewhat unusual. I think it's valuable to go through the activity. I mean, I appreciate Dave's comments both to the point of fact and to Anne in terms of what she gains from doing this. So thank you.
I do want to make clear one other thing, because it's not always clear. The council members can request that an item be pulled from consent agenda so it can be discussed. Anybody in the community can always ask that something be pulled from consent so it can be discussed as well. This is not something that's in the Brown Act, but it is a matter of common behavior. Some cities and some counties make that explicit statement in their general rules for meetings, but it is generally done that way in California. So at any meeting, any member of the public can ask that a consent item be moved to a regular discussion item. Even the county supervisors do that, the board of supervisors meeting.
Very helpful to know. Thank you. Dan, did you want to speak on this topic?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think I disagree that if something was found to be not factual, that it should be left in the minutes, regardless of whether it was actually said in the meeting or not, because that's a record, and you know, people will use that record in the future and use that to qualify the truth of it or not. So if there's a question of whether something was in fact true or not, I think it should either be noted that it was contested or removed. If there is a question of whether something is factual or not. And I understand your position. I think you said that regardless of whether it's factual or not, if it was said, it should stay in the minutes. So I disagree. I think that whether or not it's factual or not is very important. And
Okay,
you know, misleading,
that.
factual or misleading.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that perspective. I'm going to go to Greg.
I just wonder if you want to get county council's opinion on this. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Michelle. It makes sense to me, but is it a quick thing we could check with Tim Fox?
It's possible.
But we can't.
I actually
before
don't.
This meeting.
No, we'd have to. We wouldn't be able to approve the meeting minutes at this meeting. And I'm feeling like it's probably what we need to do. I think we're going to have enough council members who maybe question what we should do with respect to the minutes to just postpone them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, is there a second? Claire?
Claire seconds.
Claire's waving her hand.
So you make a motion to approve the minutes as is. Okay. And there's a second. Does anyone else want to speak on the council before we move to a vote?
Yeah, based on you know, my concerns, I will be voting to not approve. And just, you know, put it off. We can have time to talk to council and county council, and you know, I mean, I think it's important we do this right. I don't think there's any reason to feel like we're forced to approve the minutes tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Dave?
Yeah, I'm highly confident the county council's office will say the same thing that Michelle and I have said. The normal thing to do is if somebody believes something in the minutes was factually incorrect, is to correct them at the next meeting and record it in the minutes. But yeah, so we have a motion on the table.
Okay. Go ahead and call the roll, Dave.
All right, Dan,
No?
Claire,
Yes.
Len,
Yes, but I make the side comment that I don't have a problem with Michelle investigating the point further with county council anyway.
no, that's worth doing. Jill,
Yes.
Greg,
I'm gonna vote no. I don't know enough to vote yes.
Michelle,
I'm going to abstain.
and I will vote yes. So if I counted right, it passes 4-1 with Greg and Dan opposed and Michelle abstaining.
That's right.
So that's 4-2 with an abstention.
Yep.
Yep. And I will be going to county council just to check the point. I think it's a productive conversation that we had. It's important to do this right, as was said. So, you know, the minutes are approved, but I'm gonna just check so that we know how to handle this in the future. And thanks to everyone who brought this up. Okay. Let's move to the next item, which is council activity. If anyone would like to report on any activity, please go ahead and raise your hand. I'll start with Dave.
Okay, I have a fairly lengthy report on the hybrid meeting approach. I've been back and forth with Jason Francisco at Pacific Coast TV on what they're doing with hybrid meetings. And they have actually had their first hybrid meeting where there was an in-person meeting of the Jefferson Union School District. And the meeting went well, but unfortunately it was only a test because they did testing ahead of time at the beginning of the meeting or just before the meeting with Zoom callers coming in. But there were people from the public at the meeting, but nobody dialed in on Zoom. So for the actual meeting, it was just a completely in-person meeting. But anyway, what they are doing is they will provide 2 omnidirectional microphones, one for the body, in that case, the community council, and one for the audience. And they will provide Zoom feed out of their camera live. So we would not need a webcam, we would not need microphones. The benefit is what goes out on Zoom would be exactly what goes into the recording, which I think is actually beneficial. The only thing we would have to provide is a display hooked up to a microphone so we can see anybody on Zoom, and room speakers so that both the council and any physical audience can hear the people on Zoom. Jason's a little bit concerned about potential feedback issues, but I think with proper sighting, that would not be an issue. And then Jason and I are going to meet tomorrow at the GCSD meeting room and check out the situation, since it's been, what, 16 months since our last meeting in that room. Make sure the networking works, make sure microphones work and all that. But I think I can say that, on 10 days notice, we can have the equipment ready to go. PCTV is ready to be doing physical recording and Zoom feeds right now, if that's what we want. I know we are planning to have this on an agenda in August. So I'll just let it go at that.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Just to clarify, would we have our individual computers with the close-up view, or would it just be one video feed of all of us?
I think it would be just one video feed. Council members could have their own display, but they'd have to be really careful to have all the sound turned off, both microphone and and any other sound. Otherwise, feedback is almost certain.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. All right. I'll go to Len next.
In looking forward, had discussions or sent a question to RCD about the grant that Lena covered briefly. And I received and Michelle received a copy of what we presented to the supervisors. And I think it would be appropriate to post that on our website now. And unless Lena has an objection, I'd ask that she send that to Dave so he can post it, as she spoke to that point.
Michelle, is it okay if I speak?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you, Len, for asking. I really appreciate that. There was a bit of a miscommunication with Sheena and I. When I shared her with that document, I asked her to tell you to not distribute it, and I don't think she did that. So I would ask if you could please not post it on the website until it goes public on the Board of Supervisors website, which would be the Friday before the meeting.
Okay, now understand that, but I would ask Michelle, who attended it for us, to give us an account of the meeting, unless that was privileged.
Yes, I plan to do that.
Okay.
Did you have anything else? I know you had a couple other
I
topics.
probably would after you do that, but they would relate to your presentation first.
Okay, well, I would like you to speak on the other topics and then I'll give my update.
Oh, well, the main topic I have that's come up in discussions is, and I'll just for a quick second, share my screen, if that's okay, or Dave, if you could let me do it.
Let's go back to you. We'll go to Dan.
That's fine.
Let's go to Dan and then we'll go back to you, Len.
Sure.
Okay, so I just wanted to report to the council and the community that, I stopped by the crossing work in Moss Beach and, I saw some evidence that looks a lot different from what was presented.
Yeah, let me just stop you right there. That's one of the things Len is going to give an update on, and it is not complete at this time.
Tonight?
Yeah, right now is one of his other updates.
Okay, so I'll have some questions for him, maybe.
Okay. All right, Len, go ahead.
Not done.
Did you have anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll speak to that specifically now. So we received notification from Caltrans, specifically the person who manages our area, that the project to put in the beacons at the crosswalk remains stalled. It basically resolves around the ability to put in power and poles for the beacons. And there are 2 or 3 things have come up that have put it on hold. So at this point, they're working on it, but we don't have a resolution. I did, after our last meeting, repeat to them that because it has been slowed up, they took away the large warning signs, potentially in advance of thinking this would go online, but it hasn't. And I asked them to put them back up and have not heard back on that point as well. So I'll repeat that to them. But at this point, they don't have a firm date.
Okay, well, Len, you didn't acknowledge my concern.
Well, they haven't. The only change that they've made that I've detected is they took away the large 5x12 signs alerting people that their crosswalk is.
No, that's a different issue. Please don't complicate things.
Go ahead, Dan.
So the concern is that when Caltrans presented, at least from my recollection, everything that was presented was a slim pole on the northbound and the southbound side. Basically, it's not the first time that the Caltrans has presented, the county's presented, I think what they call it,
these are called rapid rectangular flashing beacons.
Exactly. On a single pole with a solar panel, giving it power. So what I saw on the east side, the ocean side of Highway 1 and Moss Beach was a substantial concrete infrastructure. I don't know. I really, it just, it doesn't make sense to me. And this is why I asked, emailed the whole council if there was any drawings, any plans that to please share with the whole council, and I did not hear a response. So I'm assuming I'm the only one concerned with this, based on no response to my email. But yeah, it doesn't sound it doesn't sound right, based on what they've already started.
I'm sorry, Dan. In what you said, I don't know what concrete structures you're referring to. I may have not seen them.
That's okay. That's okay. Didn't expect you to look at them.
Well, no, because basically it looked.
But I asked for plans.
What?
I asked for plans. And that's okay if nobody has any plans, but you know, I think if nobody's seen any plans or has access to any plans on what they're actually doing, you know, that's fine. I guess it's now on me to call Caltrans.
I don't know what you're talking about, so.
Yeah, let me step in here, and I see Claire, who's also brought up this issue, has her hand raised as well. Dan, just because you asked for plans and no one responded doesn't mean that no one else cares. It probably means that no one else has the plans. We have seen the plans. The last thing we saw was the last time they came and presented to us, which was what, a year ago, probably almost at this point. Yeah, so let me quickly go to Claire to see if she has any input. And Len is the primary person that's been in contact with Caltrans, and if we want to have him ask some specific questions, I think it's best to have him follow up directly because he's in direct communication. So Claire?
It sounds like there's two questions. One is, can we get those signs back until they get finished fixing this whole thing? And you're working on that, Len, I appreciate that. The other is, what are they actually doing out there right now? They were out there last week, they being, I guess, contractors, because they weren't identified as Caltrans or PG&E. It's not a concrete structure, except in the most general terms. It looks like a thing that they've built that you could put a pole with electricity in, but it's just not there yet. It looks like they're in the process of working on it.
More than that.
Well, we don't really know for sure what they're doing, but they're doing something.
I know what I saw.
Well, I know what I saw too.
Okay, let's stop the back and forth. Len, if you could please follow up with Caltrans on the 2 points mentioned here. The lack of those large signs that were beneficial prior, you know, those were supposed to remain there. We have asked that before, that those remain there until the work is complete. And then Dan's concern about whatever he saw, whatever is there. It'd be great.
I'll take a photo of the area, run it by Dan to make sure we see what's there, and then
okay,
get back on that too.
Sounds good.
Whoa! Am I getting blown off? Well, hold on.
You've expressed your concerns. Do you have additional concerns about Caltrans and the crosswalk?
Yeah. Number one, does anybody have access to plans?
Nothing that is not public and was already presented to us as a council.
We don't have plans.
I don't ever remember seeing plans presented to the council. I do remember hearing a general conceptual idea of what they were going to do, but I've never seen the construction plans. That was my question, and I did not get a response from anybody. So I'm assuming nobody has any plans. There's no drawings of exactly what they're going to do. That's what I'm assuming, because I didn't hear a response.
I'll review what they presented to us when they gave us a presentation on the project.
Do you have plans?
I have what they presented there. I haven't looked at it for this particular discussion. It's in our minutes.
Well, I asked if there was,
Okay, enough on this. I mean, this is getting a little out of hand. Like, we all have the same information. Dan, if you're interested in getting more additional plans, then Len can follow up
I
with
just
that.
want to know what's being built, what's planned to be built.
Okay.
I think the community also, in fact, I've talked to community members, they want to know also what is being built. And we don't know, it sounds like.
We saw the
Len-
presentation that
maybe
was
Len knows.
public.
Maybe Lynn knows.
I'll point you to that in the chat if I can pull it up before this meeting ends.
All right.
Do you have any other comments besides those on the crosswalk?
Yes. So I wanted to just say that I was speaking with a Caltrans surveyor in Half Moon Bay, and apparently there's plans for ADA improvements, some improvements to the Naomi Patridge Trail. And before they're building our trail up our way, just general knowledge to the community. And then in regards to the fire station lighting, I just wanted to let everybody know that I looked through the wetlands going northbound on Highway 1, and you can see the lights through the wetlands. So I just wanted to say that, and I will stop there.
Okay, thank you for that. Len, did you have any additional topics you wanted to speak on?
No, the things as relates to wildfire will come under future agendas.
Okay. And I'll go ahead and give my update. So yeah, yesterday I attended a meeting. Lena spoke about it briefly earlier, but it's with a group, including me, Supervisor Horsley and Lena, Austin Seeley from Coastside Fire, Nicholas Calderon from Parks, and Sheena Sidhu from the RCD on the subject of the El Granada/Quarry Park scoping project. The meeting was basically to put together what our RFP will contain. The idea is that the $75,000 amount which is going to come from Measure K funds, will be put forward at the Board of Supervisors meeting on August 2nd. And we want to be ready to go with the RFP at that date. So as soon as the funding is approved, we would have an RFP ready to go that will go out to competitive bidding, I guess it is, that we could potentially, have people bid on, and with the goal of starting the project within about 2 months. So kind of beginning of October would be when the project would start, and it would last for approximately 6 months. The purpose of the project is to define the scope of wildfire, to make the El Granada and Quarry Park area much less risky in terms of wildfire, reduce the risk, basically increase the fire resiliency. It's not to actually do any of the work, it's to scope it out and figure out how much it would cost to do, potentially various levels of work. One could be, what would it cost to remove all of the eucalyptus in Quarry Park? But obviously that's going to be a huge number. We heard at the April 14th meeting that it's probably upwards of $150 million. So what could we do in the meantime to really improve the situation for residents of El Granada without, potentially with fire breaks, other, what are the options? Basically is to put together like a menu of options that we could then use the information to go to write proposals for potential grants next year. And so what I did was I took into consideration, I contributed as the representative for the MCC to, put forward all of the. Can you still hear me? Shoot. Okay, members of the council, my headphones ran out of batteries, and members of the community. And, I will, as the project goes forward,
I will continue to gather feedback from people in the council. I know that Len has expressed interest in giving feedback prior to this RFP being written, but just in terms of turning it over, I feel like I adequately or appropriately like represented everyone's concerns. And so as we go forward, we're actually going to hear about that on the next meeting from both Lena and Sheena, and we can contribute all of our feedback at that time.
So a question about that. So are you saying that when they pass this at next week's Board of Supervisors meeting, then the RFP is ready to go out directly?
Yes.
So, and then Lena is saying that if it goes out directly, then goes through a process of selection, et cetera, and would complete next spring. Now, I had thought, I mean, therefore the question, and maybe this is an RCD question, I guess it's a clarification, maybe you or Lena could provide. Are there any, that would be a project that when complete would then point to other grants that could be written. Is there any work, 2 points, what, is there any work underway now by RCD or anyone for grants that could be put out now, or is that all on hiatus until this happens? And I thought that the magnitude of this effort was trying to take a significant step toward the size of the problem that was described to us by CAL FIRE if we wanted to really make a major effort. And is that trying to do grants of that scale or what?
I wouldn't say, and this is a better question for Sheena, I wouldn't say that grants are on hold. It's just knowing that the grant season, which grants can happen any time of year, but really I think the spring is when most of them do happen. And so actually even that's something we discussed at the meeting is that we wouldn't want to have to wait until this whole process is complete, which is probably going to be 6 months, which takes us to like the end of April until we are able to have what we need to apply for a grant. So we're actually going to phase it out where there's like initial or interim milestones that need to be completed early on, say like January or February, so that we will have information that we need to then apply for grants that happen in March or April, February, March, April. So I would say no, grant proposals are not on hold at all. It's just we know that we need more information to be able to really be more competitive for some of those other grants. And so that's the purpose of the scoping project. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, just very, very quick last thought on the Moss Beach crossing was that, there's been more than 10 years of input that the community has given to the county in regards to what they expected, what they desired. And it's not just me, there's other community members that are very concerned with the final plan, whatever's being built at Moss Beach crossing. So I think it goes without saying that the community deserves to know exactly what they're planning to do and have it in writing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to update on council activity? All right, let's talk about future agendas. So as I mentioned, we'll have this El Granada scoping project on the April 11th meeting agenda, and then we'll have the hybrid meeting topic on the second, sorry, I said April, I meant August. It's getting late. On the second August meeting, I know there are several other topics that are sort of in the works, those related to wildfire, which I think Greg, Lan, and myself will talk about and potentially bring something forward for the next meeting. Any other and then the drought topic, maybe that'll be a couple of meetings down the line. We also have the website project in the works, which will probably be like September before we bring that up again. Anything else that people want to have at a future meeting? Okay. All right. So yes, and if you think of anything in the meantime, please feel free to contact me directly. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Okay, Dave moved, Len seconded. Dave, please call the roll.
Dan,
You're on mute.
you're on mute, Dan.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
and I'm also yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
night.
Good night.
Good night.